friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. What's up, y'all? It's MC Lars. This is the MC Lars podcast. I am recording at a hotel in Laconia, New Hampshire, where I'm about to do a show at the high school here. I just finished a tour with Frontal Lot, Mega Ran, and Schaefer the Dark Lord. Thank you to everyone who came. My next tour starts a week from Friday in Cleveland with I Fight Dragons, and we will be all, I was going to say up and down the East Coast, but pretty much just down the East Coast. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Rochester, Boston, Teaneck, New Jersey, Brooklyn, Philly, Baltimore. Then I play the DC area by myself. NerdCoreTour.com for dates. I want to give a shouts out to the Patreon supporters, some of the new supporters, Vicky, Tristan, and Lucian. Thank y'all for your kindness and your support and your freshness. And shout out to some of the old Patreon supporters, Mark, Mitchell, and Mike. Thank you all very much. I'm doing the Chronicles of Narnia. The next song will be The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So let's get right into it. This week, I talked to one of my absolute musical heroes, John S. Hall of King Missile. Now, those of you who aren't super young will remember a song called Detachable Penis, which was a surprise hit for King Missile in 1992. And this was, the era of Nirvana and alternative music crossing over to mainstream radio. And the song was also popular because around this time, a disgruntled wife cut off the member of her husband or ex-husband or whatever, John Wayne Bobbitt and Lorena Bobbitt. And so a lot of DJs would play Detachable Penis and joke about it. Since then, the song has kind of taken an interesting turn in this culture of the idea of gender as a construct. John and I talk about this on the podcast, and it's kind of cool, like that this song is still relevant. King Missile was on Beavis and Butt-head a few times. John actually reminds me that he was on 3 times. Sometimes people say, oh, I wish I could go back and tell the 12-year-old me that one day I did this. Like, if I could go back and tell the 6th grade version of myself that John from King Missile came to my apartment and answered questions, played a few songs, and like really took the time and was respectful. And just the fact that he came out to talk to me means a lot. It's a time commitment. It's a few hours to come do a podcast. And that he sat down, brought his instrument, had funny things to say. My wife Ashley was like, to her, it would have been if Kim Gordon from Sonic Youth came and talked to us and came to the apartment. It was the same thing. Like, John has just been nothing but a cool guy. And I will not gush too much, even though I want to, but this is the guy who kind of showed me that you could take poetry and punk rock and storytelling and having a unique voice and make something special, and take something that had some sort of mainstream acceptance and then launch an entire discography of brilliant work. Like, there's so much great output by this guy. Also, if you stick around to the end, John plays a few songs, and afterwards I found this interview I did with him in September of 2000 when I was in New York for the CMJ Music Conference. So that's kind of crazy. If you want to hear a 20-year-old interview and hear how my skills have increased or decreased, I don't know, but I was 17 when I first interviewed him. So I found that and I put it at the end as like a little piece of history. So stick around to the very, very bitter end if you want to hear that too. Let's get into it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for supporting. And a big thank you to John for his time and his respect and for making this podcast fresh as heck. This is the MC Lars podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MC Lars podcast. Today we have, I won't lie, one of my musical heroes, John S. Hall. Give it up for John S. Hall, ladies and gentlemen. Woo!
Oh, thank you. I can hear you all applauding. That's beautiful. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm kind of overwhelmed.
John, you came all the way to our apartment early on a Saturday to talk about music and your life. And for that, I wanted to begin the podcast by thanking you.
Yes, I had originally asked, could we make it later in the day? But because I had this David Amram jazz thing that I went to last night. It was the first annual Village Trip Jazz Jam, which sounded like it was going to be like not very good, but it was amazing. It was really great. It was him, who he is, David Amram.
I know his name.
Yeah. He did the music for Pull My Daisy and Manchurian Candidate back in the day, and
with Kerouac, right?
Yeah. And so last night it was him and like 4 new school music students, and they were great. They were all fantastic, and his in between song things are wonderful. And yeah, it was a really good night. And I thought I was going to get home late, and I did. But then I had to do some other stuff in the afternoon, or in the early morning. So I had to change this to 9 a.m. Thank you for getting up and accommodating my ridiculous schedule.
Well, one thing you are not is lazy. You are a man who you are just you do so much, and I think that is like awesome. Like the fact that you're. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. Like I actually remember 25 years ago, somebody interviewing me and asking and accusing me of being a slacker. And I think because the movie Slacker was out and like that was the hip thing to be, was a slacker. And I was like insulted. I was like, no, I do a lot of shit.
And you have had multiple projects. You're a lawyer too, is that right? Or am I wrong about that?
Well, my bar fees are due. So if I don't pay them, then I guess I'm not a lawyer anymore. And I don't work as a lawyer. I work at a law firm in a non-legal capacity. But technically, if I were to be fired tomorrow, which, depending on what we discussed today, could happen, then yeah, I could go and hang my shingle out, as they say, and be a lawyer. Why? Do you need help?
No, but
okay.
I was just, it's just intriguing to me looking at your career and looking at, how you've built a way to make your art something that you own, that you do on your own terms. That, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not an artist who has to be on tour 6 months a year to feed himself.
Yeah. There was only a few years where I didn't have a job other than my band King Missile. When we were signed to Atlantic, we weren't making a lot of money, but we were on the road and getting per diems from the label, so we were surviving. But it wasn't so much the lifestyle that bothered me about that. It was actually depending on my art for income, I felt a little compromised. And now that it's solely an avocation rather than a vocation, I feel a lot more free. And my work in the last few years reflects, I think, a complete lack of interest in any commercial success whatsoever. And I'm happy with that. I try to do stuff that amuses me, that I think might amuse the handful of people that I might want to amuse, and they're imaginary people, this imaginary audience of people who I think might enjoy what, this kind of crazy thing that I've just thought of to do.
And you've influenced like a whole generation of people in other genres. The other day, a colleague I work with, Megaran, works with this guy, Open Mike Eagle.
Oh, from California, yeah. I met him when I was in LA a few years ago. Great guy. Love that guy.
I said, hey, Mike, I'm MC Lars. I'm friends with Megaran. The first thing he says to me, he goes, oh, you're a huge King Missile fan, aren't you? And I'm like, I don't know how you knew that, but he told me that
you're the other one. That's what he was saying.
And we had this moment. I'm like, these people are rare and special, but they have a sense of humor and an appreciation for like good weird music.
Well, you just gave me another reason to go back to LA. I really like that guy. He's great. I really like that guy.
I like how but in a way he reminds me of you, and funny, but also thoughtful and socially like relevant stuff. And someone who, when you see him on stage, he's doing it for real. He can't help being up there. It's like,
yeah,
in his soul. I don't know if you believe in the soul. Do you believe in the soul, John? That's a big question.
I mean, I think that's as good a word for it as any, the inner light. The thing that like, kind of like drives the mechanism of the human being forward. The thing that motivates you, inspires you, that you're passionate about. I mean, when you're in love, when you're driven to create, yeah, it feels like something, and it feels, like I think a cognitive scientists can locate it perhaps in the brain, but that doesn't matter. It's what it feels like. And so whether it's a cognitive trick or whether it's a real phenomenon, it doesn't matter. I believe in it. I trust it. I think people are better off if they do trust it and go with it. Lead with the heart, as they say. That's another word for it, heart, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not literally your heart. And yet they center it there, like when they draw pictures of it, like ancient Hindu cultures and all that. That's where that chakra is. I don't know. It feels like it comes from there, even though it's probably cognitive. Or some way the cognitive connects to the heart. I don't know. I don't know what the latest physiological explanation for it is, but I acknowledge there could be a physiological explanation for it, or it could just be more mystical than that.
Your mystical shit album, you have a chant on there.
Venam konvantam aravinda dalayataksam bharavatam samasitam buddha sundarangam. I worship Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So when I was like 14, some Krishna on the street, on 8th Street, was trying to sell me this record for $2. Like, whatever you could pay. So I gave him $2.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, you should get this record. George Harrison produced it. And I
right.
did not believe that, right?
Right.
But it's true. He actually did produce it. Now you can check on Wikipedia. And like... And that album had the phonetic transcript of the chants. So and you could memorize. So I did memorize them.
Wow.
I also memorized E Zimbra by Talking Heads. Gaji Berry Bimba Glenjidi Lali Kali Kado. You know that one from the Fear of Music record?
Right. Yeah.
I like. And Elton John has one called Solar Prestige et Gammon on the Caribou record. Those like to learn things phonetically. I haven't learned a lot of foreign language songs, but these nonsense songs are fun. Were fun for me to learn. Or actually, I shouldn't say that. Like, that is not a nonsense song. Like, learning it phonetically is what I mean.
Right.
I never learned the translation fully, but it's like about how awesome Govinda is.
And is Govinda is the Krishna one.
He's
deity?
one of the incarnations of Brahma, the supreme. Krishna is actually. Some say, well, in the Hare Krishna religion, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, they put Krishna first. But there are lots of incarnations of God in the Hindu pantheon. It's a pantheon. So there you go.
I remember seeing on the PBS had that United States of Poetry documentary, and Ginsberg was on it, and a bunch of this. And you read a poem on that, right?
My Lover.
Yeah.
We actually recorded Take Stuff from Work. I was talking to Bob Holman, who organized that thing, just about a month ago, and he was saying, I wish we still had that, that, because that's what I wanted to do, was take stuff from work, but Mark Pellington, the director, had a vision for what Take Stuff work should be, because he hadn't heard the original. And I'm not really an actor, and the way he wanted me to do it felt not like what I wrote. So I couldn't act it a different way. So we abandoned that shoot, and about a month later or more, we came up with another concept, which was to use the two musicians I was working with, Jane Scarpantoni and Sasha Forte. And we recorded My Lover. I had done a solo record with them, or was about to, called The Body Has a Head.
Right, and that I remember that only came out originally in Europe, and then it became the Green Album.
Yeah. Manufactare Criminali put it out, and then we like put it out ourselves.
So that record was kind of like a first departure from your Atlantic years in a way, right? Am I right with the chronology?
That's the first record. Is it? Yes, that's the first record I did without. And Dougie Baum played the drums on that also, but he wasn't in that video for United States of Poetry. And they dropped us, and those guys wanted to put something out, so we did. I had this one song I remember, something about it was I wrote this song based on this acid trip I took, and that was the one song that was ever cut from an album. Yeah, he said, He said, I don't understand what you're doing here. I was like, oh, well, this is a reference to The Odd Couple, and this is a reference to that time I was tripping and I couldn't understand what the guy behind the counter was saying to me. He wanted, it was like a discount ice cream thing, and he wanted, and then it would cost 36 cents, which I knew, but it sounded like he was saying 30 cents, not 36. He just said 30 cents. And I thought this was hysterically funny because I was tripping. But anyway, Magical Ice Cream Land.
So wait, that song has still never been released?
I don't think so.
Do you still have the masters of it?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know.
That might be a cool
But yeah,
post.
there's a reference to Sheldon, which was the Rob Reiner character on The Odd Couple when Penny Marshall was the secretary and her boyfriend was Rob Reiner, and he played Sheldon with no O, so it's just Sheldon, which I thought was hilarious. That's in that song too. I don't know why I'm talking about this song. Nobody will ever hear. Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
And then you've had some, one of the things I've always loved about you that as a middle schooler, your views on gender and masculinity were, for the MTV generation and a macho time, as a kid, I feel like a lot of my views on that come from the King Missile stuff, and also songs like Sensitive Artists, being able to have an ownership of having a unique view of masculinity. Even Detachable Penis kind of touches on that. And
well, I think more detachable than sensitive. I mean, sensitive. I was making fun of myself and making fun of that kind of a character who's just too sensitive to be pleasant, to in his own world to experience anybody else's worldview. Let's say, But yeah, the idea of a man being sensitive, I guess, is a little bit away from that. But detachable was definitely, it's not overt, because I couldn't figure out a way to make it overt. But it's really about ambivalence about masculinity in large part. It's the idea of wanting to put it on the shelf at least sometimes. And you think about it these days, it would be lovely. Some men might actually love to have the opportunity to leave it at home sometimes. Like, if you could go to a party and get as drunk as you want and never worry about what you might do. Because, of course, you can still harass a woman without one. Come to think of it, so I guess it doesn't solve the problem. Never mind. I guess the idea was without the penis, your mindset would be different. You'd be less motivated to baser instincts.
Right. The freedom of being without that kind of ball and chain between your legs.
But not just the organ, but the drive that comes with it. There was a rumor that the Krishnas put saltpeter in their food to decrease their sex drive. I don't know if that's true. Oh. But somebody told me, because they used to have those. Oh, they still do. Every year they have the festival in Washington Square Park, and they give you these food, and somebody said, don't eat it. Saltpeter, it'll ruin your sex drive. I was like, I don't know. It seemed like the kind of thing someone would make up.
Maybe we should invite some politicians to that potluck.
Yeah, hand it out at the door at frat parties too. Yeah. That's what sororities should do.
Right.
I was reading that, sororities aren't allowed to serve, a lot of sororities aren't allowed to serve alcohol. So if the women wanted to go to a party where there was alcohol, they had to go to the frat parties. And that's part of the huge problem.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Still, you think?
I don't know about still, but I think that's what Ford said, or somebody said that in one of their essays that, or no, maybe it was the woman in the New Yorker. I can't remember her name. But there's a lot of good writing in the New Yorker this week about this, and at least 3 women in the New Yorker are writing about it. And I think one of them said that at our parties we couldn't have alcohol, so we had to go, if we wanted to drink, to the frat parties, which really does sound insane.
It's the institutionalized, like, messed up power dynamic.
Yes.
And what I've always loved about your songs is a lot of your characters are strong women who, you know, like Gary and Melissa, right? Like their consensual, strong, insane relationship is, to me, that was like, oh, that's the model of like men don't own all the power when it comes to sexuality. It's a consensual thing and people could go as crazy as they want.
Yeah, in that song, it was deliberately meant to be equal. Like everything was equal, you know. Later on, I go into more of like female. Leather Clown from the They record is a strong female figure, but made ridiculous.
Something I always wonder is like your autobiographical stories, how true they are. Like the
Leather Clown is true up until the Leather Clown. Basically, there was this guy Ethan, and I was going to put something in that story about how one time we were on 6th Avenue, and I thought I saw $70 in the street, a 50 and a 20. And I was really excited. I snatched it up. Right, it was just lying there, no wallet or anything. I snatched it up, and then I gave him the 20. And then I looked and I saw that like the other bill was also a 20. I was like, I didn't mean to give you half, you know. So I wanted some money back, but he wouldn't give me the money back. But anyway, like we used to go to 8th Street for pizza and jelly donuts, and we did put them on the street sometimes and watch the cars drive over it. And then we did sit on a stoop and talk about stuff, but not sexual fantasies. We were in the 4th grade, and there was some interest in our 4th grade teacher, but we didn't really know what sex was, even though we were allegedly sophisticated West Village 12-year-olds or whatever. No, how old are you in 4th grade? 10-year-olds. Yeah, we didn't really know that much about it. So that was the first bit of absurdity was, and of course, right, if you're a 10-year-old and you're into like female dominance, then what you want is a leather clown. You know, you don't want just a full-on, you know, leather dominatrix. You want a little fun and lightheartedness in it. So there it was.
And that's like a theme of yours is this every song is like has a surprise. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but the juxtaposition of like the sandbox, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Finding the poop in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Like, right?
I think I haven't really thought about it that way. I mean, I think actually in the last few years, there's been more, like I've been songwriting more than writing poems or spoken word things. And there's a little bit less of that. There's still some songs with twists in them. But then like I've been setting myself the project of like just writing songs. Like I'm in this thing, the Bushwick Book Club. I don't know if you're about.
Oh yeah.
Where they assign you a book every month and you have to write a song and then perform it. So like for those, I'm really trying to honor the book, you know. And so they're usually not that twisty. The last one was a little with a twist. But like the one for the coming up, which will have happened already by the time this airs, is for Animal Farm. And that's going to be a straight up song about, I've decided to make it a song about the plight of animals on farms, or, you know, just general, like, I named the song after the Peter Singer book from 1973 called Animal Liberation. So I named the song that, but it's based, you know, in part on this, the very beginning of Animal Farm, where Old Major is talking about their plight. Anyway, so there's not much of a twist there. It's just a straight ahead song about animals that want to be free, right? But yeah, I think that's because it was the twist that would motivate me. Oh, a leather clown. Oh, take stuff from work. Oh, a detachable piece. You know, like the thing that just sort of like, the initial instinct to write is some sort of twist or twisted idea that seems like it would be fun to pursue.
I remember in my writing class in high school, we had to bring in a poem. Like everyone was assigned to bring in a poem. So I brought in the commercial from the Jesus Is Way Cool book. And I remember I read it very slowly. And I tried to copy your like inflection and stuff. And my teacher, David Miller, he goes, Andrew, my real name's Andrew. He goes, Andrew, you're sick. You need mental help. You shouldn't have brought a poem in like that. And I'm like, no, but this author is making fun of mass media and absurdity and consumption and how power, I felt like, correct me if I'm wrong, how money and power can allow people to have like a very depraved way of selling things, but just how absurd also mass media is.
It's very weird. I don't know what I was doing there. I think I started writing about an actual Irish Spring commercial, right?
Right.
And then like I just thought, well, why am I writing about this? And I thought I want something else to happen. That was the process. But I think you're right about the analysis of it. I wrote another one in the same kind of format, which was about the George Michael cover of Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, Elton John's song, right?
Right.
So he does the first verse, and then he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elton John," and he comes out and sings the second verse. And everyone in the audience is really surprised, and I'm like imagining the audience actually like tearing themselves to shreds, just like eating each other and just ripping off each other's limbs because they're so excited that it's Elton John. They didn't expect it. They're like already like having orgasms from George Michael. And then Elton John comes in and just totally finishes them off. And so it was the same idea. So I don't think I ever did anything with it. I don't know where it is now, but like when I first saw that video, it's a video, and I was like, that was the first thing that came to mind. These people are going to kill each other.
Well, that's like the idea of being so enraptured with pop culture that you'll revert to mutilation. That's kind of the trope of Martin Scorsese, right? Even though his movies are violent, that you love him so much you just want to show it by ripping his eyes out.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I think that's a good analysis of what that is. That was motivated by like having watched that scene in Goodfellas, How the Fuck Am I Funny, for like the fifth or sixth time in a hotel room when we were on tour.
Yeah.
And then we got in the van, and I think, and I said, he's so, he makes the best fucking films. And then Roger said, I just want to strangle him, and then I just wrote it. It's like, I just want to shake him. That's what he said. Yeah. I just want to shake him. And I was like, oh, yeah. And it wrote, a lot of them write themselves once you have the hook. He knew about that song. George Seminara, the video director, wanted to get him in the video, which I thought would have been weird. Like, how is he in the video and I'm not tearing him apart? It wouldn't make sense in the diegesis of the song. So he refused, or he said, I can't, my father is very sick or something like that. I think he just didn't want to do it. But like his first reaction was, what? He wants to hurt me? And I was like, what are you talking about? Don't you get it? But he might have been in the head of Age of Innocence or one of his other movies that he was making at the time that had nothing to do with that or something. So, whatever.
Was he was, though, probably flattered by it, right?
I don't know.
It's hard to know.
I don't know. Like, I was talking about this yesterday. It was like, like, I have heroes myself. Scorsese would be one, Woody Allen be another, and John Giorno is another. And John Giorno is this poet that I've met a few times, and every time I see him, I want to tell him how inspired I am by him. But I know he doesn't like what I do. He's a little bit familiar with what I do. He's seen me perform a few times, and he doesn't really like it. So like it's embarrassing for him that I'm inspired by him. Just the same way it's embarrassing for me that you're. No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, hopefully you don't feel that way.
But I mean, I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but like, we get this heartwarming thing where a kid says, oh, you helped get me through high school, right?
Right.
But then you have this other thing where, like, there's somebody who you just don't think is that good, who was inspired by you, and it's, like, embarrassing. And it's like, oh, it almost makes me wish I hadn't ever made a single recording because it inspired your awful... No, I'm exaggerating. But, yeah, that happens, too.
Right.
I'm not talking about you... And I'm not talking about Eagle. What's his name?
Mike Eagle.
I'm not talking about Mike Eagle either. I love Mike Eagle. Anyway.
I want to talk about, real quick, what was it like when you saw Beavis and Butt-head reacting to Scorsese and other videos? Like, knowing that you were part of this pop culture moment, was that weird or was that felt normal?
Detachable was on like the third episode of Beavis and Butt-head, so it wasn't on people's radar yet. It wasn't a phenomenon. So I didn't even, when they told me I was on it, I didn't know what it was because it was new.
Yeah.
And, and I watched it and I was like, oh, this is a good idea. It's like I wasn't like blown away by the concept.
Mm-hmm.
He made Idiocracy, that guy, and that's a great, great, great movie.
Yeah.
And Beavis and Butthead, I think, is coming out of that same sort of approach to like what de-evolution, like of humanity. So I appreciate his idea. Yeah, I mean, and I think that is what a lot of people do. They sit on the couch, they watch the videos, and they comment on them. So it was like, I mean, I liked it. It was good. I mean, and it got us more airplay. It put more attention onto that song. I was on Beavis and Butthead 3 times for that, for Detachable, Martin Scorsese, and also the Hey Baby video that Maggie Estep made.
Oh yeah. And that's the one where you talk about drinking coffee creamers you asked your partner to drink.
Yeah, well, it's not the partner. It's a guy who's harassing her on the street. And I'm the guy who harasses her on the street, which is like the one time. I always say this is the only decent acting job I've ever done in my life. Because I've had friends who put me in their plays. Huge mistake. I just suck at acting. I mean, like, I shouldn't say that. It's just like I've never been that good at memorizing. Like with Missile, it's like I read it off of paper until it's memorized, and that can take weeks sometimes if it's a new piece. And like with Unusual Squirrel too, I'm still like reading the shit. I'm not good at memorizing. So that hurts as an actor if you don't have the shit memorized. Then instead of acting, you're trying to recall, which doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So with that, it's a silent film basically. Like there's nothing for me to memorize, so I could just lose myself in this wonderful part that Maggie created of a guy harassing on the street. And I begged her. I was like, "Please let me be the guy." And she just took a gamble, and I really am happy with that. So Google "Hey Baby Maggie Estep," and that is me in the video. I'm not proud of a lot of things I've done, but that's one of my favorite things I've done.
I remember seeing that and be like, John plays a creepy guy well. It's like the villain.
It's surprising. But, like, this was another thing that used to always bother me about, I feel like I see it less now, but maybe I'm just not walking down the same streets. But, like, construction workers, that's the cliche, right? But literally, woman passes a construction site and the guys say something, and it pissed me off. It always pissed me off. That kind of like, or they make that noise, or that kind of thing. Just, so I think I had such a strong negative reaction to it that I remembered it and internalized it.
Yeah.
And so there, like when I'm in that video, I'm sort of like getting back at them somehow, making fun of them by being them. You think about all these men who have daughters, and it doesn't occur to any of these other men, or even the co-construction worker to his left saying like, hey, cut that out. That's somebody's daughter.
It's when toxic masculinity is unchecked, that's when it's institutionalized, and like art can call that out and put it under a magnifying glass. Like, no, this is not how you're supposed to act. This is not how you're supposed to treat women, and this is not how you're supposed to treat anyone, really, It's
a funny term, toxic masculinity. I guess when I was a teenager, I thought all masculinity was toxic. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any sense of any positive male role models, with the possible exception of my father, who was not particularly macho at all. He did, he used to berate. He used to chastise my sisters for not being ladylike, and that used to piss me off. But for the most part, he was a good man, who didn't like get into that, sexist, like reinforcement, right? But yeah, I mean, I was reading in high school a lot of feminist stuff and a lot of Malcolm X. So I was reading like what is it? Just like the marginalized voices that were in the library. So Betty Friedan, Simone de Beauvoir, Malcolm X, and I think I read Soul on Ice too and stuff like that. So which has a lot of sexist stuff in it. Might as well mention. So does Malcolm X's book a little bit. So I would read that stuff, and I became and the Scum Manifesto. Do you know about this? Valerie Solanas. She's the one who shot Andy Warhol. So she wrote a thing. She created this fake thing called the Society for Cutting Up Men, Scum, and the Scum Manifesto is one of the most, ringing indictments of men, that I have still ever encountered, and that really made me hate the male part of me, the same way Malcolm X talks about hating the white part of him, So I hated the male part of me from that, and I hated the white part of me from Malcolm X because I related to it. And there wasn't, so there wasn't that much left of me to celebrate. So a lot of my work isn't really about celebrating, it's not a song of myself, a la Walt Whitman. It's more like, let's expose the fucked upness of my mind or my confusion or my ambivalence or my depression, whatever. I've changed since then. I've realized that we all have to try to shine in our way. That's what we should do.
Yeah.
And there are ways for straight white males from semi-privileged or very privileged backgrounds to still contribute something to this world. But it's definitely true. We need to do a lot more listening, and we need to make a lot more space for other voices. That was a little commercial for multiculturalism, but
That's great,
I
man.
do believe in it.
I agree, yeah.
When I was a kid reading that stuff, my thought was, if this stuff succeeds, and I thought it was going to, if this stuff gets to the forefront of the culture, it's going to be better for me. I don't have to be that stereotypical male. I don't have to be that stereotypical white person. And maybe I am stereotypically male and stereotypically white person, but I don't have to be, and sure enough, I'm male, so I have that privilege anyway, but I felt like at that time, at least, that would just give all people more freedom, the idea that a man could stay at home and take care of a kid was an idea that in the 70s, feminists were propagating. And I thought, I didn't necessarily want to do that, but I thought, yeah, men should be able to do that, and women should be able to, it's like, why the hell not? It just felt right on just a gut level. So I just really embraced all that stuff.
I think an interesting literary influence that I see in your work, correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot of the Beat generation.
Yeah.
And
and they were very sexist.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
But somehow you read, I was reading past that. What I liked about Kerouac was his energy, his exuberance about life. And yeah, there's fucked up stuff about women all throughout the Beats. But there was stuff in there that I can embrace. And, Ginsberg isn't particularly sexist because he's focused on men when he's thinking about sex at all.
Yeah.
So, and it's Ginsberg writing more than anybody else's that I kind of internalized that, those very long sentences in things like Howl or even direct phrases that he invented, these compound things. I can't think of any, but I know I ripped off several of them and put them in my poems. Ginsberg's the one I've ripped off the most. And people recognize it who know his work and mine. A lot, not everything that I've written is Ginsbergian, but a lot of it is. And with Kerouac, not his poetry, which I've never embraced, but his prose style informed a lot of my prose poetry.
What is your favorite Kerouac book? Do you have one?
Vanity of Dolois, which I think that's how you pronounce it, which talks about his it's very weird that I like that book so much. But like, I think it's in 3 sections, and I can only remember 2 of them. But the first section is about him playing football in college, and it really captures the excitement of playing a professional sport, but in this very Kerouacian way. And then the last part is about his father dying or very sick, and it's very visceral and beautiful. But it's not a well-known book, and if I were to read it again, I'd probably say this is not Kerouac's best book. But there's something about where I was at the time I was reading it that really it really knocked me out. And I think it's the one that starts with the words "all right, wifey." You know, it's like he's telling this whole thing to his wife, and he's calling her wifey, which I don't know if that's meant to be insulting or endearing, but I remember being taken aback by that by that opening. But yeah, I think the thing about Kerouac that most inspired me is that he reads like he's just talking to you. He reads like he's holding you by the shoulder and just spouting out the whole story to you as quickly as he can, because he knows you have limited time, or something. But that's the way he wrote. Just he was trying to write like you talk, and when you see him read, it sounds like him talking. It's very authentic capturing of the way people talk.
And the way that he had such a fantastic memory that the way he could piece stuff together was like, wow, you really remembered that like in a way that was, I feel like, his superpower.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my memory isn't like his, and so that's why I have to make shit up all the time. I don't remember a single thing that me and Ethan talked about, so I had to make up a leather clown story.
You are obviously like, I feel like when I follow your blog, you keep your pulse on awesome things happening in New York and artistic and literary and cultural things that happen here. Were you born in New York City? Did you grew up here, right?
Yeah, I was born in Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn. So they lived in Bensonhurst for a couple of years. Then they moved to Bleecker Street, then Houston Street in the West Village.
In what ways do you feel like being a true New Yorker has maybe defined you or influenced you? And is that even can you even imagine yourself not having been brought up in this city?
I don't think I would have been an artist. It's like being a vegan here. It's very easy.
Right.
So I wonder if I would have been a vegan had I grown up, in the suburbs or something. But David Amram was talking about it yesterday, that there's an energy, like Washington Square Park and all these people, all these writers. Edgar Allan Poe lived near Washington Irving. Henry James has a book called Washington. There's just so much. Edna St. Vincent Millay. A lot of people I didn't read, but lived right near where I grew up. And the Beats had their, Amram was one of the first people to back up a beat poet with music, right? So and those readings happened like 3 blocks from where I grew up,
Wow.
And so as I grew up, I became aware of that history. And also like the great comics, Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Bob Newhart and all these people, when they were first starting out, they performed on Bleecker Street or McDougal Street. And I knew this, and Hendrix played at Cafe Wa on McDougal. I missed a lot of it, obviously, but I sometimes would feel their ghosts, even though some of them weren't dead yet. But I felt their energy, or what he was saying. It's like there's an energy right there in the ground. They buried a lot of people under Washington Square Park. It was a potter's field before it was a park. So maybe that's it. I don't know. If you want to get mystical again, but there does seem to be an energy there. And I think Gertrude Whitney started the Whitney on 8th Street. Like there were artists in that area as well. It was a bohemian mecca, and now it is not. But there's still there's Le Poisson Rouge, the Back Fence, which is where me and Dogbowl performed for the first time. It's on Bleecker and Thompson. And that was there until just about 3 years ago. There was a place called the Speakeasy on McDougal Street. That was where I did my very first open poetry reading. So I sort of walked in their footsteps a little bit. It's like, this is roughly where, Ginsberg and Kerouac, started out. So even though I wasn't there at the time, I could still feel like I was like picking up a mantle. Is that the word? You're picking up, whatever it is, and running with it a little bit. So yeah. So really growing up right there made it almost inevitable. Although plenty of other people I knew grew up right there, and it wasn't inevitable for them. So I stumbled upon the right books as well.
How did you and Kramer link up?
So I had a band called You Suck, and Michael Board, and that band was partly inspired by Michael Board had this band called Art, which he would put posters up. He lived on Bleecker Street. He put posters up that said Art, the only band in the world, and it looked intriguing. So me and my friend Alex went to see them one time, and it was like him like ranting and raving, and like I don't remember the other musicians, but there was this woman named Laurie Montana, and she just did sign language. She didn't, and I thought, this is like a non-musical member of a group. It was a great idea. So I came up with this idea called You Suck, this intentionally bad band that did bad covers, but also married the idea of Michael Board's, like having non-musical, performance artists on stage. So we had a guy playing Rubik's Cube. We had Laurie actually do sign language once or twice. We had like all these different people doing non-musical things. David brought this like dead fish and like a fishing line, and he like waved it around the audience at CB's one time. So Hilly Crystal at CB's loved this. Anyway.
Does video of You Suck exist?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've Googled to see if anyone has it, but I haven't seen it. This was before video. So
right.
This is film.
Wow.
So if there's film, I don't know about it.
Okay.
But and I don't know if there are any live recordings either. But we made a single with Michael Board. And then when I wanted to make demos for Missile, I called up Michael Board and I said, who should I get to record my demos? And he said, well, do you want like a really good top of the line guy, or do you want a really fast guy? And I said, I want a really fast guy. We want it, like I have a limited amount of money. We have a bunch of songs. We want to record fast. And so he said, Kramer. He actually said Mark Kramer. So I remember calling anything, is Mark Kramer there? And the guy on the other end, he goes, it's a guy asking for Mark Kramer, like making fun of me for not knowing he's just called Kramer. And he talked really fast, and he said, okay, here's the deal. You give me $700, you can have the whole day, and in the whole day we made like the 11 recordings that made up Fluting on the Hump.
Wow.
And he liked them. There's only 10 now because he took out Pygmies and Drums, which is this little thing that's on the vinyl copy only. But he liked them, so he said, I'm starting a label, I could just put this out. And I said, okay, sure. It was easy.
And
I had no idea what the label was going to be.
Wow.
I didn't know who Bongwater was. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know about his history with Eugene Chadbourne. I didn't know anything about him, But somehow, like, the recordings he made for Fluting, I love,
Yeah.
It's it was exactly the approach I would have wanted had I known what to ask for.
Did he give you insight into like did he co-write on any of those songs, or was it more just like, okay guys, go?
He didn't do any writing. we had those songs. They were done. We had been performing for like a year and a half
Yeah.
in like poetry places, and I think the newly opened Knitting Factory, we had already started playing there. But then on They, he wrote some parts because he thought some of the songs needed some additional stuff, and he had this thing that annoyed the shit out of you, which was he would just put his shit on your records and then mix them and say, okay, it's done, without you being there, So he didn't do that with Mystical, and he didn't do that with Fluting, but he did do that with They. And to be fair, there were like 15 or 20 songs on They, and some of them did need stuff. I wouldn't have done it the way he had done it, but the way he did it, but like, he made some of those songs better, and some of them he didn't make better, I don't think.
So, but then when you did Real Men, you kind of just acquiesced and were like, okay, well, let's see if we just go in, like, that record where you two worked together, was that before They or after?
That was after They. That was right. That was, we had been signed to Atlantic, and I had like a stockpile of stuff.
Okay.
And Mark Kramer said, let's do one more record and not tell the label,
Right.
We'll put it out before, the label was kind of pissed, but what the hell, they don't really, they were giving us so little money, like I didn't feel like they had a right. So, but that record made me angry for a long time because Kramer said, okay, we're just going to let the thing run and you just read your shit, So I did that, right? Like I went through, like I think you can hear rustling of paper sometimes, and just like me, like trying to find the next thing. So you just like let the thing run for 10 minutes and then another 10 minutes. And then like I left, and he showed me what he wrote for Water, and I thought it was really nice. That was the only thing. And then the next thing I heard was it was done, and I listened to it, and he took everything I recorded in the order that I recorded it, and just like played background, his background stuff and his samples and all this stuff, and in the order I recorded it, and I was like shocked. I was like, because I had we had recorded almost like 50 minutes of stuff. And I figured we'd cut out like the crap, okay. But like everything's in there, like every single thing. Oh, even in Real Men, like I say, I mess up at the end, and I say, oh, can we go back? And he just shakes his head, and so I start again. And he doesn't edit it. He just like leaves that like
adds
that.
Flavor to it.
I mean, he just like left everything exactly the way it recorded, even like some, whatever. So like, I was just shocked, and I didn't, I'm really big about sequencing, just like putting shit in like the and like he had already mastered both sides, and I was like, but this starts so weird with Enjoy Your Tea or something. I can't remember. So I said. So I said, well, can we at least make side 1, side 2, and side 2, side 1? And he said, yes. And I thought that made it a little bit better, just like changing the order of the sides.
But
that's why it's, I'm explaining why. He didn't change it on the album cover or something. So all the stuff, and it's on SoundCloud. If you know how to fix that on SoundCloud, but like all the songs are misattributed, the titles, because of that.
That's an amazing story. Yeah. I always wondered that, and I was like, wait, these titles don't, because I have the vinyl too, and that is obviously you just pick a different side.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention that as we wrap up, but
now I like that record. I mean, like now I feel like a good third of that is solid, decent shit. And then another third is okay, and then another third really shouldn't have been on there. But that's partly my fault. I didn't have to record it in the first place. But sometimes I just don't know what's good. It's like, and I wrote this recently, so maybe this is good, so I'm going to record this too. Not a good approach.
Mark Twain he didn't have good analysis of like what was his good stuff and what was his bad stuff, And I think like the hallmark of a creative person is you just do it all, especially now in this era.
Yeah.
You put it all out.
Well, Edgar Allan Poe thought his masterpiece was Eureka, which is this science fiction thing where he thought he had discovered like the origin of the universe or something. I don't remember exactly, but you know, people have returned to Eureka and said like he had a lot of ideas that have since been verified. So maybe, yeah. Anyway,
There'll be maybe Real Men is your opus, John.
a lot of people, you know, and I always say like if you like this record, you it's more likely you'll like me. It's the most like me record that I've ever made. It's the most personal like me record. For good or bad.
Well, as a fan of yours, it just showed me that like other than like, you know, acoustic music with choruses and song structure, it showed that you had this ability to shift gears so rapidly and surprisingly.
Like if you think about a song called like Pickaxe, which is on the first Atlantic record. You know, like I remember like just writing, she split my head open with a pickaxe and I loved it. And she tore my heart out of my chest and I loved it. And then my eyes are open and bleeding, you know, just like, it was just like whatever came next. And then we just took that chunk of writing from like page 42 of my like journal, right? And just made a song out of that. On the Real Men record, I would have just read that straight through. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't, you know, maybe it wouldn't have had the same kind of dynamics that the song has, but it's the same approach to writing, very like free, you know, stream of consciousness, you know. And so like on Real Men, it is just the stream, completely unedited.
Yeah. And so it was kind of, was it the A&R or the producer's idea to like make it a more of a rock song? Or was
Pickaxe?
Yeah.
No, that was us. You know, like I brought it to Dave and he came up with a riff, you know. I would say like 80% of the time with Missile, I was bringing them words and they were just like trying to figure out music. Occasionally, so Martin Scorsese's like that. Occasionally, they came up with jams. So with Detachable, I had a good idea that was gonna. I liked those words, so I waited. Like that was written by the time of the first Atlantic record, but we didn't put it on that record because I didn't hear the music that I thought would work for it. But then they had that Detachable, you know, they had written that thing, and I was like, oh, that's good music for Detachable, you know. And somehow, like, I came up with like that backing vocal, Detachable beat, you know, in the falsetto, which is me singing like tripled. So that just felt like so I'd say like a small percentage of time I'm listening to their music and looking for lyrics of mine that'll fit in it. But I think more often than not, they wrote music that they felt like Cheesecake Truck, just like perfect.
Yeah, right.
Like, Dave Rick hates that, but like he hates that. I think he hates Cheesecake Truck, but it's perfect for what the words are. You know.
How did what's the story behind the cover of Happy Hour? If you don't mind talking about it.
No, I don't. I mean, like that was like Atlantic Records had hired this art director, and she was very aggressive about her ideas and her friends, I think. So her friend had made this work of art, and she, like, to help out her friend, bought it for our cover. But we thought it was wrong in so many ways. It just really wasn't. We had a friend who made this sad ice cream cone sitting at a bar. Yeah. And we used that as the cover for the Detachable Penis single. But that really would have been a good cover for the album. You know, Happy Hour. It's like the album was exactly an hour long, which is why we named it Happy Hour. And then we decided to name that sad song Happy Hour after the album. But yeah, so we thought we would have some sort of like bar theme to the cover. But like the art director just, for one thing, I think she wasn't American and didn't know what happy hour meant. So she just went with like a photo, which actually looked better in the original version, but they had to scrunch it down. Not only does it look like, you know, not only does it look, well, whatever. It just like, it's a distorted, the artwork is distorted, and the artwork wasn't really what we would have chosen for our record anyway.
Yeah.
It was one of the rare instances, really, of Atlantic imposing their concept on us, and we just didn't have the power to like fight it.
And they didn't know they had this sleeper hit on that record, right? That like,
Well, no, I think they did think that was going to be the hit, so she chose a phallic-shaped thing to like promote that song. But the album wasn't named after the song, and like, I don't think a lot of people. I mean, that's always a problem with albums, is associating the song with the album and getting people to buy the album based on the song. It's always been a tricky business. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it sold any records for us. That cover, some great cover art can, like we never made a T-shirt out of that album or any of our albums. Now that I think about it, but. Like you think of the Modern Lovers' first record, it's iconic, and Misfit. Some Bad Brains. Some bands have like this great iconic art, and we never really came up with anything that was like really reflected us.
You have that great shirt, which is the Warhol banana that's like moldy.
Yeah,
it says "attach here" underneath it.
Yeah. That was Roger's idea, also the drummer, I think, to do that. But yeah, that's a very derivative idea. I mean, it's just of an underground Andy Warhol banana, and we just used it for our purposes.
Well, these days you are free of the label's oppression of their cover art, and you're involved in a few different projects. Like, can we talk about Unusual Squirrel? Or
Unusual. Well, so I mean, like the origin of me getting back into it was somebody contacted me wanting to license Jesus Was Way Cool, and we couldn't figure out like anymore who owned the rights to the recording because it had passed hands so many times, the Shimmy Disc stuff.
Yeah.
And they wanted, like I was trying to negotiate to just get to buy the rights. They wouldn't give me a number. So I said, it was just me and Chris on piano. And I said, why don't we, I think he suggested re-recording it. And we re-recorded Jesus Is Way Cool for this Adult Swim TV show. I can't remember the name of them now. I should. Anyway, that got us moving along, and we decided to re-record Detachable. We made a recording of Detachable, which nobody has licensed for anything, but we thought they might. And then since we got along well, we started doing shows, but it was hard to get the guys, and it still is, to get all four or even three, because Chris is in San Francisco anyway, so we have him, like we have a different keyboard player now. But it was hard and frustrating for me, because once I started performing again, I wanted to perform.
Yeah.
And I had written some new stuff that I was excited about. So I formed Unusual Squirrel with some friends, to like make it easier for me to perform when those guys were busy. And we made a record, and it's on Bandcamp, I think, and maybe SoundCloud too. I don't remember, but it's definitely on Bandcamp. And then like Unusual Squirrel was offered this show, and we couldn't do it. Only me and Susan from the band. Susan's the woman who started Bushwick Book Club as well. She's been very inspiring to me in many ways. So she said, why don't we just start another band? And I said, okay. And she's like, how about if this band is just all women except for you? And I was like, oh, that's great. And at the time, I thought I should have a concept for the band. And we made it about male submission, female dominance, and that's Sensation Play. So basically I had those two projects going for the last couple of years. And then yet another project is called Silk Cut, which is me and R.B. Corbett. She plays drums on Fluting on the Hump, but she's actually a guitarist. So it's me on ukulele and her on guitar, just a duo act. And we've played a few times. And we've got some stuff that we may record. And Sensation Play started recording, and hopefully we'll pick it up again. So, and Unusual Squirrel probably has enough for another record too. And it's just like keep writing, and like, I've been having a good time, writing Missile-esque stuff that usually goes to Unusual Squirrel because it's hard to get Missile together. And then, like, the mail submission stuff goes to Sensation Play. And then, like, I don't know exactly what the concept for Silk Cut is, like, in terms of lyrics, but it's different, like, it's more like songs or more like it's more about the music. It's me and Rebecca like kind of like jamming together and trying to come up with like musical ideas. And then, I don't know. We'll see what that becomes. It probably needs some more musicians, like a drummer or something. But.
And then a few years ago, King Missile the Fourth came out.
Oh, right. King Missile the Fourth happened before King Missile reunited, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I was writing this fucking guy poems, and then I was visiting LA to see a friend, really. But then, like, my old friend Azalea, who I made a record with like a million years ago, around like right after fluting, I think she loved fluting, and she like came up to me after a show and said, "I want to work with you," and we made a record called Baby Brother, and. That was my first home studio recording. It was really great. Anyway, so she now like still does home studio recordings with her husband, and she was like, we could make music for some of your This Fucking Guy poems, and so I recorded vocals, and then they like, for them to work with, and then I went when I was in LA, I recorded the vocals over their musical tracks. And then we released the 6-song This Fucking Guy EP.
Through a New Zealand label, right?
Through New Zealand. And we went to New Zealand and toured behind it.
How was that?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I love New Zealand. And King Missile's Detachable was a #1 song in New Zealand.
Wow.
So that's actually why New Zealand was like not completely out of the blue. New Zealand and Australia were really one of the best markets for King Missile, but we never played there.
Wow.
Yeah, we had crappy management who could not figure out how to capitalize on the fact that we had, like, the whole trajectory of Missile could have been different had we done that, because we could have gotten, like, major press over there, and it was a big mistake, I think, to miss that opportunity.
So you had fans who had never seen you perform come to see that tour.
Yeah, they were in their 80s. They came in on crutches and in wheelchairs. They were like, I used to listen to you in high school. I can't believe you're finally here. It was great. Yeah.
You brought your ukulele all the way to Brooklyn. And
Well, they're not heavy. It's a Les Paul.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Would you be down to give us a jam?
I play a couple of songs. I'm not an improvisationalist, so it wouldn't be a jam necessarily. This is a Sensation Play song. Maybe I'll do this one first, and maybe that'll get my confidence going. I'll do the other one. The last time she peed on me, the last time she peed on me, her heart wasn't in it and the light inside of me died. The last time she peed on me, the last time she peed on me, I knew it was over and the light inside, and I cried and cried and I cried. The last time she peed on me, the last time she peed on me, the last time she peed on me. The last time she peed on me, She didn't even care, she didn't even try to disgrace me. The last time she peed on me, the last time she peed on me, she didn't aim for my mouth, she didn't even aim for my face. The last time she peed on me, 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 it was if we had both agreed that this would be the last time she'd ever pee on me. A meteor might strike a major city. A massive flood could kill off everyone. The universe could collapse and everything could disappear. Mercury could fall into the sun. All kinds of terrible things could happen that would suck if we fucked, so I guess we better not fuck. I don't really know, I'm not a weather forecaster, but perhaps if we refrain from fucking each other, it could prevent a major disaster. Another landslide could hit the Himalayas. An earthquake could leave 20,000 dead. A hurricane could cut across the East Coast. I don't know about you, but I don't want that hanging over my head. All kinds of terrible things could happen that would suck if we fucked, so I guess we better not fuck. We better not fuck. We better not. All kinds of terrible, horrible things could happen, so I guess we better not. We better not. We better not. We better not. We better not fuck. That's as good as it's gonna get, my friend.
Well, John, thank you very much. Where do you recommend people follow you, and where can we find?
Oh, for God's sakes. Well, you know what? I'm not that hard to find on Facebook anymore. There is a King Missile, John S. Hall King Missile, which is public. But, like, if you send me a Facebook message to John S. Hall, I will probably just, accept your request until I get the limit to too many followers or whatever it is. And Instagram, also, I think it's John_S_Hall. Or OMG, it's JSH is Twitter, I think. Something like that. OMG, it's JSH Twitter. Yeah, John S. Hall with the underscores. And I think you can find me on Facebook, too. It's not that hard. And I'll try to keep up to date on what I'm doing.
You play New York a lot, don't you? With your different projects.
It's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's still places to play in New York. As long as there are places that'll have me, I'll do it because I like to do it.
Thank you for being on the show, man. It's been really cool talking to you.
Lars, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
And I'll keep everyone posted, and thank you again. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh my goodness, so cool to talk with John. What a great interview. The songs he played, the first one was from his band Sensation Play. Then the second one was from the Unusual Squirrel album, F Sandwich. So I kind of edited them together because he did a few takes, so I kind of wanted to put them back to back. So you can find those online. I don't think you can find the Sensation Play one yet, but you will be able to. I was going to end with something I found while I was editing this. I was hoping I had it, and I did. This is crazy. So almost 20 years ago, in September of 2000, I was in New York for CMJ. My high school had a radio station, and I went to CMJ and I interviewed John for my radio show, which was kind of crazy, like to think 20 years before I interviewed him. So I'm just going to play that. It's short, but it's kind of cool to see like me as the fan still being interested in his music and picking his brain. And he talked to me while his band was loading in at this venue he played at the now defunct College Music Journal Festival in New York. And I think, getting to know John's music and getting to know him is what made me kind of interested in possibly moving to New York, especially that trip 20 years ago made me really love the city. So here we go. Next week we have Jesse Dangerously, Canadian rapper. I've worked with him a lot. He's awesome. Tune into that. Thanks y'all for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.
For as long as I can remember, I've always been a big fan of the New York rock group King Missile. Combining clever lyrics with unique music, King Missile stand out for both their lyrical ingenuity as well as musical prowess. A few weeks ago, I was able to meet with the singer for the band King Missile in New York as part of the CMJ Music Marathon Music Festival. Before he went to do his show, he gave me some time to do a quick interview with him, which we will now play for you. It went a little something like this. So I'm here in New York
with John S. Hall, frontman of King Missile. We're here in New York.
Hello, here we are, Avenue A.
And we're getting psyched for his show, for his performance as part of the CMJ Music Marathon. And I'm just going to ask you some questions, John, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. John, how would you describe your music and the kind of stuff that you do?
Well, I don't usually describe the music because I don't have anything to do with the music, but except sometimes I'm like, well, I don't know about that music. Why don't we try some other music? But it's basically, I do the spoken word thing mostly, and sometimes the singing thing sometimes. And, people like it. Different kinds of music, depending on the words. We try to do stuff that's appropriate.
So would you consider yourself more as a poet than a musician?
I'd say more a writer than a poet, but more a poet than a musician.
That's well put. How long have you been writing? How far back can you remember being a writer?
I don't think I thought of myself really as a writer until like the second or third record, which was around 1990. But I was writing, since I was a kid.
And when was the first time you put your stuff to music?
The Missile-esque stuff that we do now started doing that in around 15 years ago.
Do you have a favorite album of yours?
I really like Failure. I really like Happy Hour. Really like Mystical. Really like Fluting. It depends on my mood what I like the best. Some of them I think didn't come across quite as well as I would have liked, but I don't think I like the Salvation record the least, I guess, but I don't really dislike it.
I know that you were signed to Atlantic for a while, and you had they were putting you towards the alternative radio and marketing you as an alternative band.
Well, at that time, it was either that or like one of the other. At that time, alternative meant anything they didn't know what to do with, which made sense in our case, because we certainly weren't a metal band or a hard rock or folk type of thing. So I didn't necessarily think it was inappropriate, but over the years, alternative came to be associated with a certain like Nirvana and post-Nirvana sound, and at that point, because when we got signed, like Bleach had come out, but never mind. You heard alternative, you thought of maybe REM or something, which is maybe a little bit more. We certainly weren't hard like Nirvana.
John and I continued our interview, talking about King Missile, the fate of music in the hands of the digital music revolution, and his favorite authors.
Where do you see yourself in the future?
I figure I'll keep writing as long as I keep writing, and probably keep making records one way or another. Whether or not anything gets played on the radio to death again, it's probably unlikely, but you never know.
Do you ever think you're going to publish another book of your stuff?
That will probably happen. That's not so difficult. It's easier now than it was even back then to do it, back when I made the first one. So people will publish your book for free these days. So it's
cool.
like it's a pretty easy deal.
What do you think of the copyright issues of internet and MP3s, and do you have an opinion?
I guess the conclusion I've reached is that music distributed on the internet should be handled in kind of the same way that radio is dealt with. That people who trade in music should pay a small fee for the use of that music, but it shouldn't necessarily be controlled by the record companies or the individual artists. Like once you record something, I think people should have the right to distribute it as long as they pay you a small fee. The way it works with like covering songs. When you cover a song, you're supposed to pay a small amount. And that's how I think it should be done with copying recordings as well. That's basically my idea. So, well, not my idea, but that's one of the things that's been handed about. So in other words, Napster technology would be fine, and I think it's a good thing. And I think it's very helpful. It's just a matter of doing it in such a way that people get compensated.
Because he is an author himself, I needed to ask John S. Hall who his favorite artist at the moment was. He said he was currently reading a book and told me about the author he was reading.
So we're I remember, it's Borges.
Cool.
Borges. Yeah.
Translation, or do you read Spanish?
Yeah, no, the translation, the new collected fictions that just came out last year. I got a paperback copy of it. It's really great. I like him a lot.
Cool. And you have a new album, right? The Body Has a Head. Is that it?
It's not new. The Failure record came out after the Body Has a Head record. I think, and then we put out our own called the Green record. I think I got to go in now.
I thanked him for the interview, and John went to set up for the concert. The show was magnificent, and I'll never forget it. Be sure to keep your ears open for any new King Missile material in the future, as it is evident that John will continue making new, memorable songs.